All the heroes that were created were not what they seemed to be. Take an Alexander Graham Bell, who was a eugenicist. Take Albert Einstein, who came out with the Oppenheimers writing a document called One World or None. Mm-hmm. And all of these people that they hand-pick, that they build up for us as leaders, are puppets of theirs. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah, if you read Einstein's books, they're primarily on politics. In fact, the man he couldn't give any science lecture without notes in front of him. All he ever talked to the public was politics. And some of the top reporters of their time, I think Snow was one of the big ones who did the main characters. He did Hitler too, and then Einstein, a whole bunch of those guys, Stalin as well. And he said all Einstein ever talked about was world government. And what he called, he said, I am a Zionist first, and no one questioned what he meant by Zionism. Their form of Zionism was a global type governmental system. That's what he meant, because this was after 1948, and Israel was already established. So he wasn't talking about Israel. He was talking about what they talk about in the societies, as they say, global government. That's what they meant. And a planned system. It's the same system that H.G. Wells talked about, a planned society where the betters, those who are more educated, those who are more evolved, they do believe in evolution, have the right to rule over the lessers. It's a form of scientific dictatorship, as Huxley talked about, Aldous Huxley. That's what we have today, and that's taken for granted at the top. We have an elite, a dominant minority, as Huxley called them. They own the money, they own the wealth and the property, and they have a scientific elite or dictatorship running the show, running us underneath them through masses of bureaucracy and what's called social services. And if you go back into the writings of Lenin, he was the first one to tell us about the West. And remember, Lenin and the Soviet system was funded from its beginning from the West, Western countries, Western banks. And all through the Soviet era, we funded them, we fed them. They couldn't even grow enough corn or wheat to feed themselves. And Lenin said that the West and the world will set up social institutions which will first start off as services. The Western world is socialized, and we have masses of bureaucracies. Many of them work with NGO groups like Children's Aids and so on. They don't realize that Children's Aid is still a private organization, but they now have SWAT teams coming in with the Children's Aid workers to take the children out. So these are the things that Lenin was talking about. It's the same with the health services. We thought the health services was a service that you either take it or leave it. Now the health services are mandating we take vaccinations. They're telling us what we must do by law, and they have governmental weight behind them. So they've followed a very old agenda that was known by people such as Lenin, and known by guys on their West, their counterparts. At the same time, we find Bertrand Russell writing about exactly the same things as Lenin. In fact, they both had the same time dates.
Sure.
Lenin said that this will take, by the beginning of the millennium, this will come into force, this whole new world order of authoritarianism. And we find that Bertrand Russell gave the same time frame for this to happen. And bingo, in 2001, we go into it with the big, the velvet glove is off the iron fist. We see it out in the open now. We're being told what to do. So we're just living through a big, long script. And once you get into the big foundations and their think tanks, they all network together. They're all one big club. They fund all the non-governmental organizations which get credence at the United Nations. They fund these NGOs that demand that laws get passed to take away everyone else's rights. And really they're just extensions of the foundations. The foundations themselves are the money launderers for a very old aristocracy who have never given us democracy. They went around democracy by the setting up of these very foundations. We find that Adam Weishaupt talked about it, and his branch of the Illuminati, there was only one of them, was caught by the Bavarian police and raided. But in his writings, Weishaupt said, we shall set up foundations and through foundations we will guide the world. That's what's actually happened. And as I say, he was only one little branch that was caught. The rest of them still exist, and are still existing today. The Rockefeller Foundation funds hundreds